What's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Court Storm College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Storm Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and I'm here with Josh. And today, for you guys, we're going to be bringing you guys some of the big game recaps from this past week, along with an overview of this week's AP poll with some things we might disagree regarding this week's poll and what the committee put together in their top 25. Additionally, we'll talk about some of the others receiving votes that are worth noting. On top of that, we're also going to preview some of the big games to come. But before we get into all of that today, please engage with the content you see on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about what we do here at the Court Storm. Everything goes a really long way with influencing YouTube's algorithm, getting more people to see our videos. Also, be sure to turn on post notifications so you are the first to see our newest content. So let's get right into it. I'll ask you first, Josh, is there a particular game matchup this past week since the last time we uploaded that you wanted to talk about first?
We got to talk about the big one. And if you're a hater out there from Michigan, you were so elated to see Wisconsin win probably the most improbable game of the season so far for any team. They go on the road in the Chrysler Center. I get this is still over break for Michigan students, but it was still a great crowd. And they win this game by a one score. Yes, I know Yaxel didn't play the full game, but Wisconsin lost at home by near 20 to Purdue. And they go a week later to the Chrysler Center and beat the best team, probably the best Michigan team we've ever seen, in my opinion. And you lose this. It's horrible, in my opinion, by far for Michigan fans. There is so much I think I could talk about this alone. This could honestly be a whole episode on how to look at mostly where Michigan could go. But a lot of those creeping, games that we saw earlier in the year, the problems that we saw against Wake Forest and TCU and even against Penn State have come to fruition here, and it does not get easier for Michigan going forward.
Right. Michigan's been honestly really tough to analyze in terms of their season as a whole up to this point so far, where you mentioned the TCU and the Wake Forest games where they barely win. They look pretty shaky in those matchups. Then they just go on that run through the Players Era Festival and the couple games following that where they're winning by 30, 40 plus against good opponents. And then now, 2 games in a row now, they don't look great once more against Penn State. You mentioned they barely win that game. They avoided losing in Happy Valley, and then you drop the game to Wisconsin at home. And I got to say, Wisconsin has almost put forth what you could call a formula on how to beat Michigan this year. At the same time, though, I still think it's tough to beat Michigan because even when they don't shoot well, which I do think the shooting has very much so come back down to earth compared to where it was during the Players Era Festival and the 1 or 2 games following that. Really, since the USC game, they haven't shot the basketball the way they were earlier on. I think, again, it's came back down to earth. Yaxel's been dealing with an injury in his calf. What Wisconsin did was they made it so that they have bigs. I mean, Bigalskis, I really can't pronounce your name. I apologize if you are. If you do happen to be watching this episode here today. But he was able to space the floor. I think he had 5 threes in that game. He was able to pull a Daymara and Merez Johnson out of the painted area, which opened things up for John Blackwell and Nick Boyd to be able to get things going on the perimeter. And that's something I talked about, I want to say, 2 or 3 episodes back now, where I feel like Michigan hasn't been challenged on the perimeter all too much this year, where a lot of teams they play are post-centric on offensively on that end of the floor. And I want to see Michigan, specifically the backcourt guard room, really have to dig in and defend against better perimeter offensive players. And that's what they had to do against the likes of John Blackwell, who could very well be a first-team Big Ten selection this year. We'll see how that ends up going down. And then Nick Boyd, who's a super talented transfer, made it Final Four back with FAU a couple years back. Was really solid at San Diego State last year, is now playing at the Power 5 level with Wisconsin this year. And listen, they were able to get cooking. They were really able to expose the guys like Ellie Cadeau, Roddy Gale, Trey McKenney, Namari Burnett out on the perimeter. And, you pull Mara and Merez out of the paint, which, by the way, both of those guys weren't the biggest factors offensively either, along with Yaxel, which was, I think, the biggest surprise for me. But they were able to pull those guys out of the painted area, and they were able to get good driving lanes to the cup. And they were able to hit shots. And you got to be able to hit shots. You got to be able to space the floor to be able to pull those bigs out of the painted area when Michigan is defending you. And I can't say that every team has the roster makeup to be able to do that. But if you do, that's probably what you want to do if you end up matching up with the Wolverines.
Yeah, and there's a lot to say once again on Wisconsin's side as well. This is the bounce back game of all bounce back games. This puts them right back in the running for a bid, if not a high single-digit seed. I don't really know where Wisconsin itself goes with a game like this because you're never gonna be able to follow this up, in my opinion. Like unless they win at Mackey, this Wisconsin team will likely fare a very similar schedule to where they were before. But this does show that Michigan has its faults. And I think it's incredibly important for a lot of teams that want to beat them because there's a method out there to beat Michigan. It exists, and I think it's going to be shown a lot more as the season continues.
Yeah, and if you're a Wolverines fan, I wouldn't hit the panic button yet. It's your first loss this year. You played a, I know the record isn't the greatest, but I don't think the record is necessarily reflective of how talented that Wisconsin team is with the players they have on that roster. And hey, I think it was a wake up call. The Michigan players, they needed a wake up call. It's tough, I think, to get up for some of the games as opposed to the ones you went on you were playing in the Players Era Festival and some of the other ranked matchups to follow, like that USC game at the Chrysler Center 2 weeks back now, I believe. And hey, they went on the road to Happy Valley. They looked honestly dead. They really didn't seem to have much motivation in that game. They were able to luck out with the win in a game where they really didn't play well or have all too much energy, and then kind of follow that up. I think the energy was there, but they definitely needed to be reminded that they are beatable, and they did get beat. And now, they got to lock in, because you drop another game to a team you probably shouldn't, then that could take you out of the race for the Big Ten regular season championship, with teams like Nebraska still undefeated. Purdue has arguably looked like the best team in the country this past month. Illinois is still a really good team. So they got to stay 10 toes down if they really want to continue to prove that they are still a top 5 team in the country.
There is a lot on the line. There's not a lot that you can imagine, but surprisingly enough, Michigan's playing their easiest part of Big Ten schedule. They should not have lost that game, and their next 5 games, which we're going to get to later on today for general schedule for the rest of the week and so on, it's the easiest part. Then they go to Michigan State. Then they go to Purdue. Then they play Duke. Then they go to Illinois. Then they have the Big Ten tournament. Then they have March. There's a lot that's going to go on there that needs to be crunched together. And I'm very worried about where this team could go if they slip up early right now. They have to win their next 4 to 5 games to be on a consistent footing. And I just, once again, I don't really know if that's going to happen if they continue to play like they did against here and like they did against Penn State. But beyond this match, what else really fascinated you over this week?
I think we got to talk about Vanderbilt, Alabama. I mean, that was the prove it game for Vandy, and they proved it. They proved that they are as good as everyone has believed them to be, all up to this point, just because they haven't played too many great top flight opponents really until this Alabama game. It's also important to mention Alabama did drop this game along with their next game against Texas, which is definitely makes you question where this Alabama program stands right now in the landscape of college basketball, in the poll and everything that comes with that. But hey, Vanderbilt's legit.
Connor
Tyler
Tanner.
Tanner is really, really good. And I mean, just that trio they have of Tyler Tanner, Tyler Nickel, Duke Miles, I mean, they're really good. And Mark Byington, he's got a formula. He's put together a great roster. I mean, they were able to handle the shot making that comes with a matchup with Nate Oates' Alabama program. I mean, I think they got the stops when they needed to. The home environment definitely showed up for that game against the Crimson Tide. And I mean, you got to give Mark Byington all the flowers in the world, because what we're talking about in the year 2026, Vanderbilt is the top 10 team in the country in college basketball.
Definitely. They deserve every credit they have. They are probably the team likely to win the SEC, which means a lot considering where the SEC is now and where it has been as recently as last year. If you're going to ask me this, I really feel like that was the deciding game. That's very much in a similar way to Michigan State at Nebraska. Honestly, I think this is probably a better version because I do feel like Alabama is a slightly better team and therefore Vanderbilt. And yeah, I think that the Devin McLaughlin, Duke Miles, and Tyler Tanner triple threat is everybody's worst nightmare. If you're matching up against Vanderbilt in the first, second, third, honestly, up until the Final Four, this team really should be in the favorite. And this is a team that really is going to push the boundaries on, can they make a national championship game? Can they make a Final Four? There's still a lot to go in the SEC play, and I don't want to say for certain where I'm feeling, but this team is really up there right now.
I have to add too, from a pure aesthetically pleasing shot making perspective, this game was great. I mean,
Easily.
these guys were just going out and playing one on one and going and getting buckets on their own. I mean, I think in this game I think Alabama finished with only 9 assists, and Vandy maybe had 10 or 11. And I mean, a lot of these were just shots created on the, just the back end of guys being tough shot makers. And that's what you got in this game. A lot of tough shot making. It was fun to watch. Really great SEC game. And yeah, like you mentioned, there was a lot riding on the lines of this game between Bama, who I think going into SEC play probably looked like the favorite to win the conference, but Vanderbilt, of course, still being undefeated. They probably have now become the head over heels favorite to win the league.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. And for Bama's purposes, it's downhill for here right now. Bama had such a great hype in non-conference. They were just winning games that we didn't think they were supposed to win. Now looking back, the St. John's win isn't really that big anymore, for example. Like there's just some sort of incontinuity that's happening with Bama that worries me because not Duke Miles, Aiden Holloway and LeBaron Philon is a great duo. But it's just that. They're not going to beat Florida like this. They're not going to beat Arkansas like this. I'm worried about them going on the road to play the trap games in the Oklahomas, the Mississippi States, the Georgias. These are games I don't know or even expect now for them to win. And that really concerns me about where they will go in the tournament because they want to have a top three, top four seed. And I don't know if that's possible anymore if they continue to play like we saw against Vanderbilt. Something needs to change. And I expect Nate Oates to do something important
Yeah.
now. It's kind of the time of the year where he does have a change in his style. But this Alabama team is kind of just living up to where I originally expected them to be. And maybe
Same.
that's kind of where we need to look at them right now, at least.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of the SEC, I want to highlight two more games that went down this past Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, Saturday. We had Florida blowing out Tennessee at home in the O Dome. Florida looks like they've started to get back on track. Big ranked wins against both Georgia and Tennessee this past week. I think there's a legitimate argument that Tennessee probably shouldn't have been ranked in this week's poll. We'll get to that in a little bit. But nonetheless, it's good seeing Florida kind of get back closer to where we both believe they probably should have been going into the year. Granted, they played a lot of tough teams and they've really lost in close fashion to all the tough teams they've played this season. Listen, what you're getting out of your big three, literal big three of Tommy Houck, Alex Condon, Ruben Chinilu, it's a lot. I think in the game against Tennessee, Ruben Chinilu had his highest scoring game of the season. I want to say he had notched 19 points. Tommy Houck was stellar. He's continued to look into like a lottery pick. I think just before recording today, me and Josh saw that he's mocked to go 10th right now per ESPN. So great to hear if you're a Gator fan. And you got good play at a Boogie Flan against Tennessee, and that's something that you'd like to see going forward, where you have games where both Xavier and Boogie play well. They still have yet to get that out of their guard pairing, but if they can get that, then Florida will be a really good team. Did you have any thoughts on Tennessee, Florida before I talk
I
about?
liked what you said. I think this is the bounce back week for Florida in between that win and the Georgia win. This puts them back in the rankings. They do have two games upcoming that might change that around, actually, but we'll get to that in a second as well. I like Florida. They're probably the number one challenger to Vanderbilt, but
Yeah,
yeah, I like that point. I like the other games as well, but
yeah.
that's probably the most I could say right
One more SEC game I want to highlight is Auburn beating
now. Yeah,
Arkansas really
that's a good one.
dominant fashion. We're at a point now. Is Keyshawn Hall the alpha on this team where everyone, including myself, as one of the biggest Todd Pettiford fans, thought it was going to be Pettiford?
I really don't like Todd Pettiford anymore. He comes up clutch, don't get me wrong, but first off, Auburn needs so much more than a point guard right now. The problem is just not in Tahad. Like I don't want to blame it on him. It's definitely experience. Like this is once again Steve Pearl's random first, not Steve Pearl's, his son's first year, and you're gonna have the inexperience of all this happening. Like you're not really gonna have anything more than I originally thought. Once again, this is kind of like Alabama on the flip side. This team probably should be better. And say what you will about certain games and certain almost buzzer beaters, if you know what I mean. I do feel like Keyshawn Hall is by far the best player on this team. And it's probably a first team All SEC the way he's been playing. He's had multiple 30-point games so far to start the play. And I think the jungle is going to be a trap spot for any team in the top echelon making their way here. I feel like they probably win most of those games too. They really should be running the table at home in particular, but it really hasn't been the case so far. And there needs to be change if Auburn wants to get a 6 seed or higher, which once again, not looking likely.
Yeah, I mean, I think this was such a crucial win for Auburn just because they have not looked great really to start this year. They're 10-6 after this win. Arkansas, of course, one of the better teams in the SEC. But I think Auburn just really had a great all around game. Of course, Keyshawn Hall highlighted with 30 points on his own. But you had guys like Keyshawn Murphy and Kevin Overton, Elijah Freeman as well. They all had pretty solid games. Tahad was honestly not all too special in this game. I think he only had 6 or 8 points. I forget what it was. In Arkansas, I mean, they got. I think they need more out of Darius Acuff from the playmaking angle. He was able to score in this game. Malik Thomas was able to score, but Acuff, your running point, you got to get more than one assist. And I think he's a freshman. It's what happens. Sometimes you lose some of these games, especially when you go on the road. It's tough to win as a freshman in the SEC. But really, at the end of the day, big win for Auburn. Good getting back on track and in the win column. Outside of that, I guess you could probably throw a shout over to the matchup between who was it?
You bring
Oh, Nebraska and
Yeah,
Indiana.
Nebraska. Yeah, Nebraska, Indiana. That was what I wanted to really talk about. I think I'll
Sure.
probably take it from there. I think Nebraska's just on some sort of run. Like this is once again something we can focus on later on in the video, but this win against Indiana represents so much more than just a good win against a top 7 to 8 Big Ten team in Indiana. Nebraska was down 16 points in the middle of the second half. They immediately go on a 13-0 run to tie the game. They take the lead, hold the lead, and prevent Tucker DeVries, out of all people, from being the guy on this team, which Indiana has an explosively good offense, and they were playing in Assembly Hall, which is obviously a great home field advantage for any team. I get it that they weren't like it wasn't the school year still, but even then, like IU's always going to have a basketball culture. It's always going to be a busy place, and it was that day. And it was like it really looked like it was over for Nebraska. It looked like they were going to lose by 20 plus. And the consistent growth that I've seen from individual players too, more than just Rink Moss, more than just Price Sanford, honestly, even more than Jamarcus. Remember his last name?
Lawrence.
Yeah,
Lawrence.
like the depth is growing in the season. That is just you don't see that ever. And the ability for this team to come back on the road against a quad one team, incredible. Because who says they can't do that to Michigan? They play
Yeah.
Michigan near the end of the month. They're probably going to be undefeated against a one-loss Michigan team, most likely. They might even be ranked higher if Michigan drops another game, for all we know. There is so much that we can put down on where Nebraska's ceiling is. I don't know if they can get a 1 seed. I don't know if they can get a Final Four, but there's no true powerhouse on this team. That's what makes it so unique because it could really just be anybody on a regular basis, regardless of whether you're down 16 or up 16. And that's what makes Nebraska probably the most amazing team of the year. There's nothing like this.
I love the points you made. I mean, the depth, of course. I think you had 7 guys for Nebraska log 20 or more minutes in this game. You mentioned the Michigan upcoming Michigan matchup too in the weeks to come. I think they have the type of roster that's able to beat Michigan regarding what I talked about earlier in the video of what the formula might exactly be to beat Michigan this year. You need forwards. You need big men who can space the floor. Rink Mass can do that. He's one of the best shooting forwards in the country. Price Sanford can do the same. You need toughness out of your guards. And Jamarcus Lawrence, I feel like, has probably been the most under talked about guy on this Nebraska team during this run they've went on. There are 27 points he had against Indiana. And I mean, he reminded everybody that he's a guy too for Nebraska this year. Sam Hoiberg, I mean, one of the best glue guys in the sport that you'll find across any roster. And he plays just so tough. And I mean, what you get out of just everyone on this roster, it's committed toughness on the defensive end. There's no quit in them. You mentioned they came back from down 16. A lot of teams wouldn't be able to do that in Assembly Hall. I understand this isn't the old, I guess for what you want to call your mother's Assembly Hall, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it's still a tough place to win. And they were able to pull off that comeback in that building. I think that tells you all you need to know about the heart that this Nebraska team has. From the Indiana angle, someone else needs to emerge outside of Tucker DeVries and Lamar Wilkerson. Those 2 guys alone aren't enough to win you games in the Big Ten. You need to look for a guy like a Sam Alexis or a Connor Enright to really step up. Reed Bailey, Trent Sisley, someone needs to emerge as a third guy on this Hoosiers team this year for Darren DeVries. And until they do that, then they're going to lose a lot more of these closer games.
Yeah, they're once again, there's a lot to say. And like Indiana will have their chances. It's the Big Ten. They'll play the
Yeah,
Michigan. They'll play the Purdue. But this was a game that they had like a 90% chance of winning plus going into like the 10-minute mark against Nebraska at home. And you had Tucker DeVries, you had Lamar Wilkerson, you had a fully ready and moving team that was making themselves work well. Like it really looked like the team was working. And then Nebraska hit into another gear, stopped all of that in an instant, and turned back the game in a matter of 3 minutes. That
right.
you, I just don't understand how this is being ignored right now because Nebraska, I would say, is very, very good. I think they are probably worse than Vanderbilt. I know we people like to compare them, but even then, a moment like this is a moment you don't get anytime else in the season, and it needs to be respected more.
Definitely. And I think that pretty much takes care of our big game recaps from this past week. So let's get into this week's AP poll. Of course, not too much movement at the top outside of Michigan dropping down from number 2 to number 4. Also, on top of that, Nebraska is comfortably in the top 10 at number 8, and Vandy is at number 10 now. But really, where we want to talk about is, especially Joshua with him not necessarily liking this week's poll, it's about the bottom. I think there are some teams here that probably shouldn't be after how they performed this past week. Cough, cough, Louisville, cough, cough, Tennessee. But I'll let Josh elaborate because I think he definitely has some opinions to voice on this.
Yeah, this is the first AP poll I didn't like. It's simple enough. The AP poll has had some pretty good runs. Like this has been a good run, but outside of like, I mean, the top of the poll is nice. I'll say that. The one vote to Iowa State's pretty stupid. I don't know who did that, but congratulations. Maybe Purdue should have been 4 and Michigan 5. I don't really want to argue that one. Glad Gonzaga moves down. They haven't looked as consistent as I would have liked. But I think a really big argument right now starts with Nebraska Vanderbilt. Why is Nebraska 8? Why is Vanderbilt 10? First off, both should be 8, 9, maybe 7, 8. And I think Nebraska should be lower than Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt has a better team. They have a better resume. They have better wins against top ranked opponents. And I get it. People are just going bananas for this Nebraska team in the same way that people are going bananas for this Vanderbilt team. And I was just going bananas for Nebraska a second ago, but I mentioned before this Vanderbilt team is better. They are better than Nebraska. And I think that it's a little detail, but Vanderbilt is the better undefeated team. And I think they will last longer being an undefeated team than Nebraska, for example.
Yeah, I honestly don't disagree with the point you made all too much. I definitely trust Vandy at being able to win their conference more so than I do Nebraska. And I think Nebraska could potentially be peaking a little too early. And I honestly think I like the roster makeup of Vandy more than I do Nebraska. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about regarding?
Yeah, there's a few more. I think
Yeah,
a big one that I want to talk about is Virginia. They went up 7 in this poll, which I don't really know why they're being so highly ranked right now. They're big. They had 2 good wins, but one of them was a home win, a bare home win against California, like a maybe a tournament team. And you go up 7 just because everybody else was losing. But even then, like I don't think Virginia is better than Arkansas, and they're ranked over them. Like Virginia's a good team. They're maybe a 4 seed at most, but the ACC is not going to give them that many more quality wins unless they do beat a team like Duke. And I just feel like this is putting them on a pedestal that's a little bit undeserving because they have that recent loss to Virginia Tech. That's still in the back of my. That's like that shouldn't be the back of the mind, and it kind of is. And I really feel like this team has its weaknesses, and it just like it shouldn't be like that. They have their test games upcoming, so we will see more. Rising 7's a little too much, but I think the real problem, and this is where I want to bring Kanaye to this, is 20 through 25 and others receiving votes. This bottom half doesn't deserve to be there. I don't think Louisville needs to be ranked. I don't think Georgia should be ranked. I don't think Tennessee should be ranked. I don't get why St. Louis or Miami, Ohio are not ranked. These are mid-majors that deserve the credit, and they're once again being ignored because the AP poll ignores mid-majors. They finally put Utah State on, only to have them at 23. They should be higher than that, maybe 20. if you're going to ask me. So the bottom 5 teams plus the others receiving votes is just not good. It's just not good.
I hear you out with your points you made about Virginia. I mean, they're going to get their prove it game tonight on the day of this recording, Tuesday, January 13th, against Louisville. I also feel like Louisville probably shouldn't be ranked this week considering they lost and they didn't move down at all. They stayed at 20, which is where they were last week. Georgia should not be here. Clemson, give Clemson a pass, but
Yeah,
Tennessee, I
Clemson
definitely think
deserves a
should
little
be.
pass.
Tennessee should be off this poll. I mean, they just really have not looked good the entirety of the year, honestly. And this, a lot of people, including myself, thought that Rick Barnes is going to be able to figure it out. What he has between Jacoby Gillespie, Nate and Matt. But Seton Hall, super excited seeing the Pirates here. Finally get to see another Big East team back in the AP poll. They got a big test coming up tonight at home against UConn. I, as a Husky fan, would not be shocked if UConn drops this game just because they always seem to lose at the Rock. But you talk about St. Louis, Kansas, Iowa. Kansas, Iowa, I don't really see too much of an argument for to be ranked. Or, sorry, not you. Other people have talked about Iowa and Kansas, and I mean, I don't see an argument for them to be ranked right now, or probably next week, unless Kansas can pull off a win against Iowa State tonight at Fog Allen. St. Louis, I think you mentioned St. Louis being the team of destiny for the A10 this year. I'm very much so on that bandwagon. I'm in love with the St. Louis team. I can guarantee you will be ranked next week. I mark it up because I'm pretty sure they will be. With who I think I'm looking at the bottom of the poll right now, and who I probably think will lose this week. And then I think there's conversations for Miami, Ohio, who's continuing to look stellar. Villanova, I think if they can win out and certain other matchups go in their favor, then they could end up being ranked next week as well. But yeah, I mean, bottom of the poll was not great this week. Like you mentioned, this is probably the first miss from the Associated Press Committee this year in college basketball. But let's get into some big game overviews that we have, or previews, I should say, going into some of the games both tonight and later this week. I guess we could start it off with Iowa State, Kansas. Are you picking Iowa State to drop one at Fog Allen?
Yeah, this is the biggest game for an undefeated team today, or as of today's recording on Tuesday the 13th. This is the test game. This is the test game for, I think, both teams in many ways, because Iowa State, the number 2 team in the country right now, they feel like, once again, the best team that Iowa State's ever fielded, which, like, I think I'm saying that about a lot of teams this season. There's a lot of good programs having their best years, and Iowa State
Hey,
is
top of the
one of
sport.
them.
It's one of the
Love to
best
see it
years you've ever
too.
seen.
Love to see it. But the real question is, can they do it at Fog Allen with David Peterson? I believe he is supposed to play this game, and even if it's just like the last 2 where he's only played like 20 or so minutes, it's still probably going to be like 18 points in 21 minutes. Those points will matter heavily. Fog Allen will be packed heavily. Iowa State will need every single bucket to hit. They will need Momcilovic to be playing like he did at Purdue. They will need Tom and Lipsy to play at his peak level. This is a game that I think a lot of people have circled down and will be circling down to watch. I don't know right now, because I would say I do feel like is a little bit overrated right now. I know that is a little bad to say considering they are, they're undefeated. They have that win against Purdue, but there's just something missing from this squad in terms of offense. It's only the defense is great. That's Iowa State's always successful point. But what happens if we don't get the big 3 playing like the big 3? Like if Momcilovic doesn't hit his threes, if Joshua Jefferson doesn't get 15 points or more, there are my concerns. There are my problems. Like Tom and Lipsy might turn the ball over me way too many times. And like on the main battle too, I don't know if Flory Badunga has a challenge in this game. I don't know if he's gonna really lose to Momcilovic if he goes to try for the rim. If Joshua Jefferson tries to go for the rim, I don't know if Badunga is gonna just have a problem with that. Like he might just swat the ball away. He's been great on the block so far, so I feel like there could be some really big issues in the paint battle, which Kansas might win that.
Right. I mean, I want to preface this. Iowa State played outstanding at Mackey Arena, one of the toughest places to play in the country. And arguably you could say that is the best win in the country this year right now, even to up to this point. But I don't think they've played a team like Kansas yet, where Kansas is just so gritty. They are so tough defensively. I mean, we've talked about how the players on this year's Kansas team really play with pride in wearing the Kansas jersey. I understand they just lost, but right after we said that we thought that the win at TCU was their turnaround point. But listen, Kansas is really fighting for honestly their bubble lives. I mean, they really need to stack some wins, and this would be a great starting point of being able to take down Iowa State at home. I mean, listen, Mackey's tough place to play, but Fog Allen Fieldhouse is a different animal compared to anywhere else in the country, and that student section is going to thrive off the energy and the defense that Jayhawks program this year plays with. And let me tell you, all it takes is Darren Peterson to get going for it to get scary for Iowa State. The other two big matchups tonight are UConn Seton Hall, Virginia Louisville. I'll let you pick which one you want to talk about if there is
I
anything
think we
regarding either of
talk
these two
about
games.
both. I'll do a quick one for Louisville and Virginia. As I mentioned before, I think both teams are being overrated here in terms of the ranking, but regardless, it's a ranked
Yeah,
matchup. This is a big win or win opportunity for both teams, particularly Louisville, who is once again without Mikal Brown Jr. We are having now our concerns about is he even going to play a game, which
yeah,
really throws Louisville for that loop. This was the player that was supposed to make this a title contending team, and this is a big game for them. Honestly, in the AP poll eyes, if they lose this game to Virginia, they're out of the poll. They're definitely out of the poll, in my opinion. And
right.
they're out of ACC contention as well. They're dropping way too many easy games, and they're playing too many close games as well. And then for Virginia, keep the ball rolling. If you want to prove continuously that it's not just the Cows and the North Carolina states that you can beat, go to Louisville, one of the hardest places to play in the ACC. Win that game outright. Don't make it look like an overtime, like a Virginia Tech game, for example, where they lost that and they probably should have won that game. Make it look like a understandable win, and then you're that second team in the ACC. Maybe you're that third team if you're considering UNC right now, because Virginia is a dark horse to win the ACC. They can honestly go toe to toe with North Carolina and Duke on their home court right now. What says them not doing it if they beat this Louisville team in the KFC Yum Center? So that's what I could say to that. But the big one, I think that obviously you'd like to cover is Seton Hall and UConn. So I'll let you start with that.
Yeah, I quickly previewed this on the last Saturdays in Stores podcast. If you are a Husky fan, definitely go see that if you haven't already. But, this game, it's really interesting, especially now that Seton Hall is ranked. Listen, UConn's had some pretty bad luck going to Newark the last 4 years now under Dan. This is definitely a game that they could drop. I gotta say, I think the thing that I highlighted to Josh before we start recording here today is I think the matchup I'm most looking forward to seeing is not necessarily matchup. The player I'm most particularly on UConn that I'm going to be paying attention to is Silas Demery, because I feel like Silas Demery's kind of turned the corner that we've been talking about for a long time. He had the breakout performance against Providence where he was aggressive offensively, and I mean 23 and 15, that speaks for itself. And then he follows it up with a efficient performance of 14 points against DePaul. It seems like he's finally figuring out when to be aggressive and when to be a facilitator. He's got to go up against the ninth best defense in the country per KenPom in the Seton Hall Pirates. And let me tell you, Shaheen Holloway, he's got these guys to buy in. I mean, Seton Hall, I think it's underrated how deep the Seton Hall team is. They have a lot of guys that play double digit minutes every night. I mean, they're big three, I guess if you want to call it that, between AJ Stanton McCray, Todd, Tajon Simpkins, yeah, and
Yeah.
Tajon Simpkins, and Bud Clark. I mean, they're so tough. They're hard nosed. Bud Clark, I mean, I love watching the guy. Just an undersized guard in the Big East, and he was so fun watching Merrimack last year and seeing him succeed at the high major level is definitely great to see. And, I mean, Seton Hall, they receive nowhere near as close to the amount of funding that other programs in this league get. And for Shaheen to be able to get players that fit what he wants to do with his program and building a culture there with the limited resources that he does have, you have to give him so much credit. And this team plays so tough. And I think The Rock is going to feed off that team's energy tonight. I'm sure The Rock will get bumping tonight. I know it's not always the toughest place to play. That's not always the best. It's sometimes tough to have to play in the Rock as your home environment as a college program. But when it gets rocking at the Rock, it gets rocking, and those players feed off that energy. There's just something about the air and the prudential that the players, I swear, they get superpowers. And I don't be shocked if UConn drops this game today. But I think regardless, win or lose for UConn, it's going to be ugly. I think this game is going to be played in the 60s. It could end up being a one possession game. We'll see what ends up happening with that. But nonetheless, great seeing a top 25 matchup in the Big East when I wasn't sure if we were going to be getting one for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. And it is, in a weird way, the marquee matchup of the Big East right now. Seton Hall
Yeah.
and St. John's are the only two ranked teams, and I'm sure Villanova and Creighton and St. John's could possibly get back into the rankings. But as of right now, this is the best matchup. And like Kanaye said before, the Rock has some sort of power to it. I mean, it's not the Miles Powell Rock that we used to have or
Right.
anything like that, but this is the biggest matchup that Seton Hall has had of the decade, in my opinion,
Yeah.
which is insane to even say out loud. Shaheen Holloway has his work cut out for him. He's done so well. And I mean, this is beyond being a UConn fan or beyond being a Big East fan, but this could revive the conference if Seton Hall were to win this game.
Most definitely.
Ability for Seton Hall to rise in Ken Palm, to rise in the Bowl, to rise in this, and then likely lose to a Villanova, to a St. John's, distributing the ability. Because right now, there are maybe two or three teams that are slotted to make the tournament right now. This could expand the number, and I do really wonder what happens because UConn looks unstoppable at times, and then they have miracle games like the one against Providence the other day, where they really should not have won that game. And maybe this is like Penn State for them. Maybe this is a very similar type of game where the flaws that UConn has beyond the lack of Terrace Reed and Braylon Mullins shows. Like the non-injury problems
Yeah.
might become a real deal, and that might cause a loss here. And that if the loss happens at Seton Hall, who says they don't lose at Villanova? Who says they don't lose at Creighton? Who says they don't lose at St. John's? There are problems that could arise from this loss that I think a lot of people need to be focusing about if they are particularly interested on the Big East and particularly interested on UConn's fate because they are the Big East's best chance of winning the national title.
Yeah, I mean, UConn, I think, has the worst turnover rate in the Big East right now, and Seton Hall loves to turn the ball over. So definitely something to watch out for tonight. But looking ahead, tomorrow, so Wednesday, January 14th, there are a few trap game opportunities. Number 10, Vanderbilt is going to Texas. Texas coming off the win against Alabama. That's definitely something to watch out for. Same thing goes with UNC and Duke heading out west to play both Stanford and Cal, respectively. Cal and Stanford have been really solid this year. They both could be tournament hopeful teams as we get further down the road. Both teams, if they win those games, are probably in the tournament if they will come out with a victory. So UNC Duke, they got to come out with their best stuff. Michigan looks to get back on track heading to Washington. That is, I think, another trap game. Washington is playing with their tournament hopes on the line. So those three games I'm definitely curious about. And TCU going to BYU. TCU has played a lot of teams tough this year. BYU, I have my concerns about. And they got a big matchup upcoming later on. Believe Saturday it is against Texas Tech. So, BYU, they got two tough games in a row.
Yeah, there is so much to wonder about this team and the schedule too. Once again, it's not going to get easier. I like your point once again, but I don't know, it's up in the air. It's up in the air for this squad.
Yeah, I mean BYU, I think I was telling Josh off recording. They really snuck out a win against Utah. And AJ
Yeah,
Devonta
yeah,
called it the toughest
that's a good
away
point.
environment he's ever played in. And listen, I wanna come out and say like I don't think I think there's a real chance that BYU gets upset in the first weekend this year. I'm honestly out on BYU being able to make a Final Four. Of course, I'm not saying it's impossible. They have the offensive firepower, if you want to call it. It's a different type of firepower. They have really good isolation individual scores, but they don't have really collective great play calling from Kevin Young. In a way, he's kind of just let the guys play and go and get their own baskets, and a very much pro style offense. Of course, he has the pro experience being an assistant with the Phoenix Suns before coming to Provo as his first college job. But just defensively, I don't think that program is there this year. I don't think that they run enough offensively where the shots aren't falling when these guys are taking their one-on-one isolation shots. Then what do you do? I mean, you're going to play some really really tough teams, starting with Texas Tech this Saturday. And I don't know that they're going to be able to have anyone to defend JT Toppin or Christian Anderson. I think that's a game that they lose, quite honestly. And I think there's a legitimate chance they lose to TCU tomorrow as well.
Yeah, there is a problem that could be brewing down in pro because this is that one of those four teams that everyone's saying can compete in the Big 12. And while I do expect them to have their challenges, if you want to see Debansa be the BYU great, the better than Jimmer Fredette great that a lot of people are saying he is, he not only needs to step up, but he needs to facilitate this game so that him, Richie Saunders, Kennard Davis, and the rest of this starting five can win these games. Because once again, you got to win the games against TC. You got to win the game against Utah. I don't know if they can win this game against Texas Tech. And maybe that's just a lot. But if they play a good game against Texas Tech, that makes me feel more confident when Houston comes to town, when Arizona comes to town, when Iowa State comes to town. They have to win these home games. I think, honestly, all of these home games, if they want to win the Big 12 and get a possible one seed, if that's even on the table for them. And I just wonder a lot because my big problem with BYU right now is Richie Saunders. No offense to him, but his game hasn't been consistent. It's not like last year at all when he was the main leading player. And I thought it could have happened again, and it didn't really need to happen. Debanza looks great. Debanza looks like a player of the year favorite right now alongside Cam Boozer.
Yeah.
But is a freshman enough to do it? I just don't know.
Let me ask you this before we mention a few more games. Do you think BYU is the worst one-loss team in the country right now?
That's a great question because there are a lot of one-loss teams right
Yeah,
now
there's
in
a
this in
lot
the
of
country. Which is
one-loss teams.
it's so funny to say that out loud, but there are a lot of one-loss teams. In a way, I'm actually shocked BYU has only one loss. I feel like they
Right.
should have
They've
more
gotten
than
lucky.
that, but they haven't
They've
played a
gotten
tough
lucky.
schedule. They played a very light schedule especially as of late. So it kind of
Right.
makes sense, and it worries me that they're playing the easy games now, and they're going to get pummeled when the hard games come because they're gonna, like I said before, get the Houstons, the
Yeah.
Fog Allen, Kansas games. Like they might even struggle against a game at Oklahoma State if they have to go there, at UCF if they have to go there. Like they struggled against Utah, and I get it. It's the holy war, but even then, they should be winning that game by double digits, not coming down to the last few buckets against a bottom team.
And in a way, their first legit game this year was against UConn in Boston, and that was UConn's as well. I think both teams were able to see where their weaknesses were, and BYU haven't really played too many great opponents outside of that. Probably the best team they played since the UConn game was against Clemson and Jimmy V Classic, and they had to come back from a large deficit against a Clemson team that is ranked right now, but probably isn't as good as some of the other teams they're going to be facing in the Big 12. And I gotta say, game to game, even when you're being able to get the reps against some of these teams that you kind of can play through your mistakes and learn more and grow more through, they don't look like they're getting much better from where they were at the beginning of the season. And that's something that really concerns me about them heading into the heart of their Big 12 schedule. But to highlight some other games, Kentucky is going to Knoxville to play number 24 Tennessee. The Wildcats are without Jalen Lowe for the remainder of the season. He's undergoing shoulder surgery to repair the shoulder that he's been having issues with this entire season. And now I think Kentucky's in a tough spot because, yes, you lose one of your on paper best players, but now they don't have to deal with the kind of saga of is he going to play tonight? Is he not? Are we going to have our full team? Are we not? You know what guy is going to be playing the role of point for the Wildcats and Mark Pope this year. It's probably going to fall on the shoulders of Jasper Johnson. You're going to look for him to hopefully step up and put his big boy pants on and have a really productive finish to his freshman season. But I mean, I don't know. I think Kentucky might be dead in the water.
Yeah, there's a lot to say. Like you thought bringing Jaden Quaidens back into the battle would have changed things, but then you're taking out Jalen Lowe full time.
Right.
And I get Jalen Lowe wasn't crazy, but who's leading that? Who's leading the offense, point guard wise? Like this is not.
Exactly.
This was supposed to be a point guard led offense, and I'm done on Otega Oweh. He can't come back. He just
Yeah.
can't come back. I'm so sorry to say this, Big Blue, but where is he? Where is the best player in the SEC last year beside Johnny Broome? Where is this man? I don't understand where he is and where he has been doing because he's not been the player we need. Like Diabate's great. What's the Florida transfer?
Denzel Aberdeen.
Aberdeen's been great. Obviously, Jasper Johnson, Malachi Moreno, Colin Shannon. Like you're relying on guys that don't need to be this important. This team was supposed to be more consistent where, yes, you might have needed to have relied on Otega Oweh or Jaden Quaidens on a given night, but now it feels like it's too separate and too disparate to the point where, like, how good is Malachi Moreno when he's leading a team? How good is Jasper Johnson when he's leading a team? These are freshmen as well, by the way. Otega Oweh has the experience. He doesn't, I don't even know if he can get drafted right now, the way he's playing. Like, there's just so many concerns around the fall off of this man that worry me. And it's not like Mark Pope's quotes are getting any better either. Like this team is just falling off a cliff. in the worst possible fashion, yeah, they could totally win this game. I'm not denying it, but I bet that they don't. I really do feel like this is a team that is they're just not doing well. I still don't understand why. Like I was a big fan of this Kentucky team, and I will still be a big fan of this Kentucky team. But this is horrible to watch. Like they are a borderline bubble team right now. Tell me why.
Yeah, I mean, this game it's being played between two desperate teams, two teams that I honestly have to say have been some of the more disappointing teams to start this season.
Yeah,
And I mean,
Tennessee's been on that way too. If I can butt in for a second, blowing
I mean, Tennessee's unranked; they lose this game, so they have not
they
looked great
shouldn't
this year.
even be ranked as well. Beyond that,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean they shouldn't be ranked like we talked about when we went over the poll, and they're both teams are really desperate right now. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of guys who could go off for big performances. Of course, Otega's struggled, but I wouldn't count him out and being able to have a big score night. We could finally see Nate Ament get going. We'll see if that happens. Jacoby Gillespie recently had a 30-point performance, so maybe he keeps that scoring production up. But the last game that I want to highlight before we get out of here today is number 19 Florida heading to Nashville play number 10 Vanderbilt. Another SEC game with SEC regular season championship implications. We're really going to see how Vanderbilt handles the big three of Hal, Condon, and Chinelu, which I'm really excited to see. I don't think that they were really challenged in the interior against Alabama. I think that was more so of a guard defending the guards on the perimeter, and they did a decent enough job at that to be able to get out with a sneak out a close win. But it's kind of the reverse opposite here. It's, excuse me, though, the polar opposite here. You got Florida, who has struggling guards, but a really, really good front line with a three-headed monster in the front court. I'm excited to see how Mark Byington game plans for this matchup.
yeah, I don't know. Once again, it's a hard choice. It's a really hard choice between the two of them.
Right.
I don't know. What were you gonna say for your choice?
It's tough to pick. Vandy is rolling right now, but I'm honestly I might lean Florida here, quite honestly.
I kind of want to go the other way. I wanted to ask you this beforehand because I did want to say Vanderbilt, but
Yeah.
yeah, this is the sign of the SEC right here. This is I don't know. This is the I don't know game for me from the SEC's perspective because I get it.
Right.
Alabama was likely a team to win the SEC when they played Vanderbilt, and now they really don't look like it after losing to Texas at home, which we didn't cover. Sorry if we did that. But Florida's been looking up and up. I don't really see them falling down anywhere. And Vanderbilt kind of needs to go into this same space that they went with Vanderbilt with Bama. I don't know if they can do that again. I mean, it's a lot to ask for, but they are playing at home. And if you want to keep that undefeated record going and you really want to make them look like the team of destiny, then go for it. And by the way, I actually will bring this up because I came back to me. Vanderbilt is 16-0. That is their record. They go 17-0. That's a new record. The last time they went 16-0, they lost in the first round. I don't know what happens next to that one team. You can look it back up to 2007, 2008 team, but this could be a downward slope if they lose a game here.
Yeah.
And their schedule
Yeah.
does get harder as well, by the way. They do have a lot of road games against the Tennessees, the Kentuckys, the Alabamas, and if
Right.
they lose at home, that's not the sign you want to give.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Vandy, you got to win here. I mean, Florida's going to come out swinging because if Florida wins this game, they're back. I mean, Boogie Flan just probably had his best game of the season against Tennessee, and if he gets going for the rest of the season, then Florida's going to be tough to stop. I mean, I've talked about for so long the guards are going to determine how good Florida can be this year and how far they can go in the NCAA tournament. And we still haven't gotten a game yet where both Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee have played well together. And if they get that, then Florida is so tough to defend with just two guys who are really able to get to their spots but haven't been able to knock down shots consistently when they get to those spots. If they could do that in this game, then I mean, it's going to be tough to go against. I mean, you have two guys who could compete to be a Naismith Defensive Player of the Year, and Tyler Tanner, who's averaging close, I think, to 3 steals a game, and along with Duke Miles, who's been a dog on that end of the floor as well. But I think with the way Tommy Hauck's been playing, Condon has been, for the most part, consistent. Chinny Lou's coming off his best scoring game of the season. Vanderbilt's going to have their hands full trying to defend the bigs that you play when you play Florida. But nonetheless, should be a really good game. And again, one that has SEC regular season championship implications.
Yeah. Are there any other games you had in mind?
I think we pretty much hit on all the big ones. I will say Arkansas and Georgia is definitely one
Yeah,
that
that
could
I
potentially.
was thinking about that one, but That feels like a more decided game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Arkansas more than likely comes out with the win in that
Yeah.
matchup.
I mean,
Virginia SMU could be interesting. SMU coming off a close loss to Duke at Cameron Indoor without Boopy Miller, so they're definitely that program's definitely on the rise. Outside of that, though, I think that pretty much takes care of
yeah,
all the
I would say a few trap games are coming up this week. You have Michigan and Michigan State actually at Washington. That could be a little bit feisty. Actually, a lot of the good East Coast teams go to the West Coast. Duke goes to Cal and Stanford. North Carolina goes to Cal and Stanford as well, actually. So you have those particular games. Oklahoma has visits from Florida and Alabama. So traps there for the Sooners to take advantage of. I know Arizona goes on the road to UCF, if I'm not wrong, for this Saturday. That could be a game that really gives us a better clue about how Arizona fares on the road in the Big 12. And then, yeah, Illinois and I actually no, Nebraska and Northwestern, I would say, is a trap game as well. That can give us an additional to the Indiana and Ohio State road games about how Nebraska continues to win these really good road games. I'm not saying Nebraska's a good road, Northwestern's a good road game, but they have a great home court presence when they are in a good spot, and got to see that.
Yeah, I mean, this week is going to be great for college basketball. I think if you're a fan, you should tune in as much as possible. A lot of big time ranked matchups, a lot of really interesting potential trap games that we could end up seeing. But I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything we had for you guys today. If you stuck around to the end, please do whatever you can to engage with the videos as we talked about earlier. But until our next episode next week, we'll see you all next time.